Avery, whose show is this? And we're live. Welcome everybody here to the Lakers Lowdown Pod. No, this is a lounge. I'm still figuring this out. Apologies, but this is a lounge episode, as this will be a little bit longer. I'll be answering your guys' mailbag questions in this one. I'll be talking about the piece I just wrote for Clutch Points. Won't be narrating it. I'll narrate that for the lowdown episode that I'm going to record here in a second. But yeah, I've noticed a ton of chatter on in my mentions. I've seen a couple columns written about it. I've seen it become the subject of a lot of conversation and consternation about whether the Lakers should actually blow this thing up. Have they reached the end of the LeBron and AD era? And is it time to just let it just kind of go out on its own terms? And I have my own thoughts on that. And before I give my own thoughts, I wrote 4 clutch points about that notion and the possibility of the Lakers trading LeBron. And in doing so, spoke to some people either close to the Lakers or around the league about what that would even look like, if it's even possible, if it's something that the Lakers would ever entertain. So we'll talk about all of that stuff. And then once I get through all of that, I will go ahead and take questions from the live audience. To those of you who are watching live here on YouTube, if you are not watching live on YouTube, the best way to not miss any shows like this, even if I'm recording them late on a night that I don't have any reason to be recording it late. I guess it's Jen's birthday weekend or birthday week. And I told her that I would hang with her tonight after the kids go to bed and then record after she goes to bed. And we'll see how long I'm able to carry out that schedule. But no, we go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That is at youtube.com/@LakersLounge. If you guys are watching live, please hit that like button as well. Those things help us. If you guys are watching on Twitter, again, the link is youtube.com/@LakersLounge. And then if you guys are going to be listening to this in the morning in audio form, please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you get your podcast, preferably on Odyssey, because I'm a company man. Also being a company man, look at this thing up here, huh? Look at that. Look at that logo up there. So yeah, let's dive on in to the notion of the Lakers blowing it up. So this type of thing, the subject I feel like comes up like every year, basically. The Lakers have been mostly mediocre in regular seasons while LeBron and AD have been there. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the front office is just not as good as it needs to be, not as extensive as it needs to be. Sure, like that's the biggest, I think, criticism. But I think also part of this is that like LeBron and AD recognize what they're capable of doing in the postseason and tend to approach the regular season in an at times non-serious way. I think this year is the first time that like when they go to flip that switch, you're seeing them not necessarily able to get over that hump in games that they really, really, really want to win. And on top of that, like the supporting cast around them is such that it also hurts their ability to flip that switch. And where you arrive at now is a team that like is, in the hunt technically in the Western Conference, where they sit, in like the 7 or 8 seed. They are, they have 11 losses on the year, which like 3 other teams in the Western Conference also have 11 losses at this stage of the season. But what the Lakers don't have going for them is a positive net rating, which normally kind of tells a bit of a story as far as like how good a team actually is. It's really early, and maybe if the Lakers make the correct tweaks over the course of the season, some of those things kind of balance back out, and you're looking at a very different team, and you're telling a very different story at the end of the year. And that's certainly what the Lakers are hoping for. But if it looks like, the Lakers are just going to be mediocre again, and they aren't really going to figure into the championship picture, which I don't think they're as good as Boston. I don't think they're as good as Cleveland. I don't think they're as good as OKC. Denver is always going to smack them up and down the court, because that team just seems to understand that they have the Lakers number. So essentially, like, if you're basically sitting there and you're like, well, what are the Lakers actually capable of here? Is it worth it to ride this all the way out with LeBron and AD, neither of whom were drafted by the Lakers? You don't have that, like, you know, feel it in your chest feeling towards either of those guys. The Lakers fan base doesn't, right? Like, LeBron was a Cav twice, and he was a member of the Miami Heat before this. Anthony Davis was drafted by New Orleans and came over here and won the championship. And I'm not saying that, they don't, the Lakers and the Lakers fans don't owe them a lot, because that championship run does mean a lot to me. Trust me, it does. But, like, this isn't, like, when we got to the end of, like, the Kobe run, um, I remember at that time, like, especially after the Lakers now, uh, Rob Pelinka, like, if you hear him tell the story, he'll say that, like, the Lakers didn't want or didn't, like, worry about giving Kobe a pay cut that year. Certainly at that time, I remember when it was asked of Kobe, like, "Hey, are you going to take a pay cut to maybe help the Lakers build out a roster around you?" He said, like, just flat out no. So, like, whatever it winds up being, but I remember at that time Kobe was on a big post Achilles contract, and I was thinking to myself, like, would it make more sense to maybe trade him at the end of this run, maybe give him another opportunity elsewhere to win another championship? Um, and and at the end of the day, like, the Lakers decided no, it wasn't worth it. They wanted Kobe to retire in a Lakers uniform. They wanted him to only be in a Lakers uniform. And there are other such examples, right? Steph is probably going to finish out his career in Golden State. Um, and it would be a real shame to not see that take place. Dirk in Dallas, right? Magic was a little different because of the circumstances surrounding his first retirement. But when he came back, it's not like he was coming back and was like, well, maybe I'll play for the Magic. They look okay. I'm not even sure if the Magic existed back then. And here with the Lakers, this isn't a situation where, like, there's a ton of sentimentality here devoted towards the LeBron James and Anthony Davis era. Like, if this is it, then maybe it makes a little bit more sense to move them. So I think we have to look at this in a few different ways. First off, like, we got to talk about the practicality of moving LeBron, because it's really difficult. And it's like the kind of trade that you have to put together to send him to, like, the type of destination he would actually like to go to is really kind of tricky. And, for the Lakers, like, when Kobe made his trade demand, I talked to an executive about this out there in the East. Um, like, that executive basically said, like, well, Kobe made his demand and the Lakers tried to trade him. They got out there, they fielded offers. That ball got kicked pretty far down the field with Chicago. And then eventually, like, Kobe decided he wanted to play with Luol Deng, and the Lakers were like, we're not going to trade you to Chicago and not get Luol Deng back. So, like, in this case, I'm sure that the Lakers would entertain trading him. But we got to talk about, like, how tricky this trade would be and whether it would actually help the parties that we're actually talking about helping here. So I spent a lot of time in writing this on the trade machine, trying to find a trade that made sense for all parties involved here. Because, and this is how it goes here with trades, right? In trades, the fewer people who you have to care about their interests, the easier it is to pull off that trade. If it's just two teams and a few players that you don't, owe anything to outside of, look, we employ you, we're paying you your contract. Those are the easiest trades to get done. But in the case of the Lakers, trying to find a trade that would send out LeBron James to a place where he would have a chance at winning a championship. And by the way, like, I think LeBron would have to play better in aggregate to have a real chance at winning a championship almost anywhere that he would go. But so the Lakers would have to either set themselves up for a rebuild in trading LeBron, or set themselves up to at least, like, that, like, pseudo competition that Brooklyn tried for a little bit after KD and all of that stuff. Like, give that a go for a little while, and then eventually, embrace a rebuild. But and then on top of that, you would have to, do right by the team that is bringing in LeBron James. And it's just, there's a lot to figure out here in this new CBA. It makes it all the more complicated. Like, I think the only place that I think LeBron would welcome a trade to would probably be the Golden State Warriors. Maybe you could say Cleveland again, but I think Cleveland is playing so well at this point that I don't think they would really mess up with what they're doing right now to completely, rethink their approach while they're having the season that they're having. But let's just limit this to Golden State. Now, the trade that actually works, that would, appease the cap and appease the CBA would be, and this is from, I didn't put this one together. I don't really like this return, to be completely honest. But I'll go ahead and add this overlay here so that y'all can see it too. But the Lakers would be sending LeBron, and they would be getting back Andrew Wiggins, DeAnthony Melton's expiring contract, Jonathan Kuminga, who they would have to immediately have to turn around and pay, and Trace Jackson Davis. And man, like, TJD had like a really fun season before, and I think we've seen him come back down to earth a little bit. Kuminga has taken a step forward this year, so kudos to him for that. And then Wiggins, you have that contract, which is just 3 years, almost $90 million left on that contract. Like, if you're the Lakers and you're trying to enter a rebuild, you don't want Wiggins' contract on your books because, he won the championship the 1 year. And then last year he had that weird, like, family issue that kept him away from the team for a while. Never quite looked the same again. It hasn't looked the same basically since, consistently the same since winning that championship. This is also the same player in Andrew Wiggins who, like, was heading towards bust, territory before he got to the Golden State Warriors. And so, like, if you're the Lakers, do you really want to, like, hitch your wagon to that? You would have to get a ton of picks back for, taking on Wiggins' contract and for sending out LeBron. Also, not included in that, like, I was asking around, and it was like, well, if LeBron's getting traded, Bronny's in that trade too. And that was according to a few league sources, was like, no, LeBron's not chasing a championship away from his son after forcing the Lakers to draft his son. So you have that to take into account. On top of all of this, the Warriors would have to do a ton of work to their roster to even be able to bring in LeBron on the other side of this, and then the Lakers would have to waive a bunch of players, like a third of their roster, to make this work. And the point here being is that, like, after all of that work, after all of that headache, if you're going to do this, if you're LeBron and you're going to ring chase, then you'd better win a freaking ring. And I don't know that LeBron in Golden State with just Steph, LeBron, Draymond, Pods, Looney, Healed, who's been fine early in the season, but this is just part of his natural cycle. Like, I just don't like Moody is there, I guess, too. I don't see that team being like overwhelming in the way that it would need to be for LeBron to take the hit to go and play in Steph's city. And then for like Golden State's from their perspective, it's like, we have all this cheap talent. Why are we turning that into a guy, a 1-year rental, maybe a year and a half long rental? And then on the other side of that, we have to like employ his son for another couple years. Like, I don't know if it makes sense for the Warriors side of this either. And yeah, I I get why people are talking about this. I get why it's why it would be something that people would entertain. But in terms of like everything that would need to happen cap wise, CBA wise, and importantly, to the standard of like actually upholding why any of these people would want this kind of a deal, I just don't see a deal that makes much sense there. Now, you could always involve a third team. You could always, teams can do work heading into a trade that would give them more flexibility while they're trying to make that trade. There's all that to take into account too. But now you're talking about a series of deals to get LeBron to Golden State. And I think at the end of all of it, it's like, is it worth it to LeBron? And it doesn't seem like it from the people I've spoken to. Would it be worth it to LeBron to leave LA, to leave his family and go play in Golden State for a year and a half or so and still probably not win a championship? That's the part that I don't think people are quite understanding here when we're just talking about this trade, not even taking into account what it would mean for the Lakers. All right, so let's talk about this. Let's actually like go through the steps here and let's talk about like, should the Lakers blow it up? First and foremost, if you're going to blow it up, you got to own your own pick. Because let's say the Lakers blow it up here and they tank and they're terrible and we have to watch terrible basketball for the entirety of a season. At the end of it, I don't even get to like, there's no chance at Cooper Flag. All that means is that we just improve the chances that Atlanta gets it Cooper Flag or any of the other, like, there's some good talent in this year's draft and like no chance at all of getting him. And then like, all right, so you're going to trade LeBron. Are you trading Anthony Davis now too? Selfishly speaking real here, I think I'd kind of like if you're going to trade LeBron, I think I would kind of like to see what Anthony Davis's team would look like without LeBron there, just to see what it looks like, and then eventually you can make that trade. You could trade the time frame for trading Anthony Davis is a lot broader than trading LeBron, right? Because if you trade LeBron now, that team gets the remainder of this season and then probably next year and maybe another year beyond that of LeBron James on their team. As far as like LeBron James playing at an elite level, we've already started to see some cracks there. Which again is part of why I think a lot of people are saying, all right, we can deal with like a lot of the LeBron James headache so long as he's playing at an elite level night in, night out. And he isn't now. And I think that's what I see in a lot of my mentions is like the juice ain't worth the squeeze anymore at this point. Which I don't necessarily agree with, but I think that's where a lot of people are kind of coming from here. There's a lot of also like Kobe fans who just never really messed with LeBron. And now that he has kind of slipped a little bit, they feel a little bit more comfortable talking shit on LeBron. That's what happens when you do the mercenary thing. But anyway, um, as far as like the Lakers standpoint here, I don't love the idea of bottoming out in a year that you don't have your pick. And I would rather bottom out, trade LeBron or whatever, um, trade Anthony Davis in the upcoming summer, and then completely embrace the tank the following year. Problem for Jeannie Buss is she can't do that because that's what she fired her brother for. She can't like fire Jim Buss for embracing the tank and building through the draft and putting together that young core that eventually got them Anthony Davis. You can't fire him for that and then turn around and do it, less than a decade later or whatever it would be. So, and I also just don't trust the Lakers and specifically this front office to execute a rebuild. Like, what? um, I this is the same front office that a couple of years ago, or I guess now it's like 5 years ago, we're coming off of a championship, put together a pretty good roster the following year, and then completely freaked out when that year didn't go to plan because everybody was clearly exhausted. Not just the Lakers, the Nuggets were tired, the Celtics were tired, the Heat were tired. All four of those Final Four teams from the bubble were all clearly exhausted in the following year when they had to play the next season like 5 business days later. That number keeps shrinking. Like the Lakers freaked out, and then they also like, that team was so selfless and it was so resilient and it just didn't give a bleep. It was just like what was best for the team, and we accepted those roles. And then like, the very next year you bring in Dennis Schroeder and you promise him a starting gig, and you bring in Montrezl Harrell and you promise him a certain number of minutes. You bring in Andre Drummond and you promise him a certain number of minutes. And it's like that team like completely forgot what it was about. And ever since then, the Lakers just have completely lacked culture because Rob Pelinka has done a really poor job of instilling a culture in the organization. And by extension, Jeannie Buss has done an even worse job of instilling that culture. And so this is the brain trust that you want to trust. Like you want to hand them the keys to a rebuild too, having seen how mediocre this team has been with LeBron and AD in their primes over the last 5-6 years. That's what we want to do. I would rather ride this thing till the wheels fall off. I really would. I'll give you an example. Over this last weekend, my parents are coming to town for Christmas, and my brothers too. And so I'm getting the house ready, and I'm going way above and beyond. I'm not gonna like to show off to my little brothers a little bit, but like there's some stuff that I wanted to do to the house anyway that I've always kind of thought about doing and stuff. So this last weekend, um, I ordered a smart light switch, one of those Amazon basic light switches. Um, and the hope was that I would attach it to my fireplace because it's a gas fireplace, and I would be able to tell her, without saying her name, so she doesn't answer here on the show, to tell on to turn on my fireplace. And that would be like a funny little thing that like, would impress my parents for like 30 seconds and everybody would move on. So I tried doing it this last weekend, and man, I had to pull apart the entire fireplace because the pilot went out, and I had made an appointment to send somebody out here to do it for me because it wasn't working. And it was like, I could do all of this work when really just putting everything back together the way that it was and having to get up and walk across the room just to turn on my fireplace is perfectly fine. Like it really isn't that big of a deal. It's the kind of thing that only I would care about now. Jen has completely forgotten about it, especially now that the fireplace works. My parents are no, you know, wiser for my attempt at trying it. Like, no, nobody knows. And yet I was still like, because I got so deep into the thick of things, I was like, well, I got to call an electrician. Well, maybe I need a specialist out here from Heat and Glow. And because they're the people who make the fireplace. Maybe I got to bring them out here so they can install a specific plug that would be able to do it. And I'm going through all of these things. And like all it took was me taking a step back, taking a deep breath, and being like, no, my fireplace is fine. This is fine. It heats up that living room really, really well. I love the ambiance. It's just fine. What are we doing? It would have cost hundreds of dollars to bring, an electrician out here, and I'd be super pissed because they'd be here for 15 minutes to do something that I should be able to figure out. Just let it go. Nobody cares. And I kind of feel like that's where we sit here with the LeBron AD era. And it's like, well, maybe we'll just blow the whole thing up and we'll go into the rebuild and we'll jumpstart this rebuild. Think of all the picks that we could get for those guys. And in reality, the much simpler course of action here is just like, no, idiots. Just make it work with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Let's try that out. That and it's like, yeah, all right, maybe they're not going to win a championship, but they're still probably going to be pretty good. They're still probably going to make the playoffs. They're still probably going to be fine. And, so long as those guys aren't unhappy there, you don't risk pissing off the next generation of stars who are like watching how they're handling this. Now, look, I don't think the next generation of stars all that interested in playing for a Rob Pelinka organization, but maybe like they'll look at the Lakers organization and be like, all right, they talked to LeBron, they talked to Anthony Davis, and they figured out what was best for everybody involved. And in this case, at least this season, what's best for everybody is just to finish out the season. Maybe you use some second round draft capital to make some moves on the margins to add to the collective athleticism and the defensive identity that this team lacks. Maybe you use a first round pick to go out and get Dorian Finney-Smith and really, address that kind of an issue. Dorian Finney-Smith and stuff from Brooklyn, whatever that would be. But I do really kind of feel like this is one of those fork in the road moments where, like, for me, I could have, brought out an electrician and spent money for the sake of spending money and done stuff for the sake of doing stuff just so that I could say, Alexa, turn on my fireplace. Don't actually. We're good. When in reality, like the wiser course of action is just work with what you got, maximize what you got, and see where that gets you. And then at the end of the year, then you revisit the subject. All right, that went a lot longer than I thought it was going to. We do have a starred comment here from Justin Tyndall, so that means... All right, Justin writes, blow it up after the season if we don't do anything. Plus, the 27 pick is top 4 protected. Does Jeannie want to three-peat being in the play-in? Fire Rob. Well, that last part, frankly, agree with. Yeah, I think I just don't see a practical and realistic path here for the Lakers to move LeBron James and have the value that you get back for LeBron now compared to the value that you would get for him, this summer after he opts into his deal. Like, I don't see that gap in value being such that you just completely let go of the rope this season. We've seen enough flashes from this team that I think they're going to be competitive far more often than they aren't. And then, look, competitive can't be the expectation here. I want more from a LeBron and AD team. I want more from a Lakers team. But again, think of the front office that we're talking about here. When you here's how this would go. When you hand the keys to a rebuild off to a front office, they get to see the rebuild come to its fruition. So you're probably looking at another 4 or 5 years of the Rob Pelinka regime. And that's what he would earn himself by being able to trade LeBron James. I don't want that. I would much rather ride out LeBron and AD, even if it's in mediocrity, with that being the end of the Rob Pelinka thing, so that you can have a full reset after LeBron and after AD. That's what I like. That I think makes the most sense. And I think that's what I think most people would agree makes the most sense for those like who are looking to the next chapter of the Lakers basketball. JK Lobos writes, "Hey Anthony, great show. How many of the upcoming games do you think we have to lose in December to make a trade? Or do you think the front office will save the picks and sell tickets?" Well, all right. I guess that's something to take into account here. Is if the Lakers just completely fall off of a cliff, then that's a very different scenario that we're talking about. So I'd like fair on that front. As far as like how many it would take to get to that point, here's how I'll put it. Based on the conversations that I had over the course of the last couple of days or so, and certainly today in writing what I wrote for Clutch Points, which I should probably just put in the chat, the Lakers would not and will not consider trading LeBron or Anthony Davis until those guys approach them and say, we want to trade. So all of this noise is just that. It's just noise. Last year, the Ryan Windhorst reported for ESPN that Golden State called up the Lakers and asked about a deal, spoke to Jeannie Buss. It got to like Joe Lacob, I believe, spoke to Jeannie Buss, and Jeannie was like, talk to LeBron about it, and see what he says. And obviously didn't go anywhere after that. And if Golden State comes calling again, if the Lakers are terrible, maybe then Jeannie, hands the phone off to LeBron, and LeBron's a little bit more open to the idea of it. But again, like LeBron is, like loves being in LA, loves being a Laker, loves having his family there, loves like getting to like the idea that like he would just be like, all right, Savannah, you hold down the fort for the next for 12 out of the next 16 months. And I'm going to go up there and play basketball with Steph, and I'm going to try to win a championship. Also, I'm probably bringing Bronny with me. I don't see him asking the Lakers for that unless things go really, really poorly. But like even there, if things go really, really poorly, that means he probably played a part in things going really poorly. The part of this that is like the awkward truth here when it comes to LeBron is that he's part of the problem. Like he is. His defense has been abysmal this year. And then he went into that slump and took the Lakers completely out of the player and ball motion stuff that they were doing at the beginning of the year to break out of a slump. Like, we can also acknowledge that. I got heat for saying that I wish LeBron and AD would get back on defense faster. And even if you don't care about that from like a leadership standpoint, it matters when the other team is like scouting that against you and using it to their advantage. Like wherever LeBron goes, he's going to have those same questions facing him. He's still making $48 million a year. So yeah, and the other thing too that I heard, and I think I included in today's piece, LeBron was willing to take a pay cut this last year and was willing to work with the Lakers so that they could go out and get Klay Thompson or maybe go out and get James Harden or hilariously Jonas Valanciunas. Um, there are people who I've spoken to who do kind of wonder how open to that he would be again this year. Remember, he can opt out of his contract this year. And if the Lakers have an opportunity to go out and get a player who would give him a better chance at winning a championship next year in LA, close to his family, with Bronny there, all that good stuff, would he prefer sticking this out for that potential opportunity over going and chasing a championship, you know, whatever it is, 800 miles up the coast? I don't know. I don't know. So like I tend to think that this is all early December stuff that we say when we're too bored because it's not quite Christmas yet. I don't think he's getting traded. I don't think the Lakers want to trade him. I don't think he wants to be traded. If things go really, really poorly, okay, maybe we revisit this. But for right now, this is just all in the hypothetical. All right, we got another one here from Brandon Oming who writes, excuse me. All right, sorry. All right. Brandon Oming writes, thoughts on an AR, Dalton Connect, Dorian Finney-Smith, LeBron, and AD with D'Lo, Max, Vando, Christian Wood, Jonas lineup. I feel like you can get a balance of offense and defense, and you can try to flip Hayes and Reddish. I don't know what you would really get for that package. So I guess in this instance, you would be trading just Gabe or Dorian, unless which it would be Gabe and a pick for Dorian Finney-Smith. Like if you're able to just turn Gabe into Dorian, I think your team is quite a bit better. I just don't think Brooklyn would be very open to it. But like if that was a possibility, I'd definitely be down for it for sure. Let's go. Hooper's X. Hilarious that Anthony takes no comments from anyone who doesn't pay him. I look, guys, I tell you guys all the time, there are other ways to do this. You can send me a comment on Twitter and prove that you are subscribed to the show. You could hit me up on Discord if you want to hit me up on Discord. I'm about to open up Discord right now and answer them. Or the best way, as I always talk about, is the 5-star reviews on iTunes. I always get to those. We are always up to date on those. So I promise, Hoopers, there's no reason to whine right now. All right, so let's go ahead and dive on into. I asked for questions on Twitter the other day, so I will start there. With those of you who have proof that you are subscribed to the show. So at Sebastian Berner wrote, "Hi Anthony, happy Sunday. I'm starting a podcast about movies with a couple of friends. Any advice? Also, can the Lakers move D'Lo to the Magic after the injuries of Franz and Paolo?" Well, that's interesting. Depends on what you get back. I I tend to think like once you lose your two absolute best players, that most teams just kind of close up shop and see if they could stay afloat. But if they do decide that like D'Lo is enough to kind of keep them up to D'Lo would help them stay afloat, then certainly that would be something that um you know maybe they consider. Maybe I guess in this case you're like getting back KCP for that, which I'd be down with. But yeah, as far as like the movie podcasting, like just have fun. That's where all of this started. We were having our fun talking about the Lakers, and people seem to really enjoy it. And now, unfortunately, over the years, like some guys kind of fell off, and then because of opportunity is elsewhere. Harrison and I don't get to do it every day the way that we used to at one point, and Pete and I don't get to do it every day in the way that we used to. But it was if you start with low expectations and you just have your fun and you pay attention to the market and you find a unique way to attack a niche in that market, then those podcasts tend to do pretty well. Hazim writes here, keeping me on task. Anything on the wood update? So from what tomorrow or today, by the time you guys are listening to this in audio form, today is when we're supposed to, reach that 4-week moment with Christian Wood after the last 4-week update. And I would imagine we're going to get some information on that front. Some beat reporter, I would imagine, is going to ask about it. Now, the Lakers don't play or don't practice tomorrow. So I guess technically it would probably come on Wednesday. But Christian Wood's agent is usually pretty active. And if there's good news to share, he will share it. If there isn't good news to share, then you can usually kind of take that for what it is. But the Lakers do hope to get Christian Wood back sooner than later. And, frankly, they need more bigger bodies. So we'll see what he's able to do and when he's able to do it. As I've said before, though, guys, like I'm not gonna report on injury stuff. Like, it's just there are too many cooks in that kitchen when it comes to whether or not, like, what goes into a player being available. The best way to do this is when you see said player on the court, that player is healthy. All right. Next one here comes from Lakers Supply. How soon after December 15th do we expect to see Jonas in a Lakers uniform? I asked about that today, and essentially, like, when the Lakers traded for Rui a couple of years ago, there was no market basically for Rui, and it made it easier for the Lakers to go to the Wizards and be like, "Hey, let's just make this work now. Here's an extra second rounder for not waiting on this." But Rui at that time, I believe, was like in and out of the rotation, was off to a pretty uninspiring start to his career. And I don't think there was a crazy market on Rui Hachimura when the Lakers made that deal. With Jonas, given all of the injuries across the league for centers, given like his literal body type, it kind of matters here because of the types of centers that teams are going to convince themselves that he can help with. Like, there is actually going to be a market for him. And when that is the case, if you're going to trade for the guy, you have to pay that much more to convince the team that has the guy to trade him before they get to experience that market competition. And like, if you're asking like what the chances are that the Lakers get this guy on December 15th, the Lakers and Washington have maintained steady conversations over the course of the year on a variety of topics and players. And I would imagine on December 15th, maybe they'll have a more impactful conversation on that front. But at the end of the day, Washington, could just decide, now we're going to hold on to him and get a little bit closer to the deadline. Now there's risk there too, right? Because if you do that and then Jonas gets hurt, then those second rounders that you could maybe get for him, they're no longer on the table. And now you have to just watch Jonas on your bench there for a while. So maybe, if Washington doesn't want to mess around with that risk, and if the Lakers convince them to not mess around with that risk, and then, maybe give them an extra second rounder here or there, then maybe Jonas is a Laker on December 16th or whatever it would be. I would put it unlikely. I would consider it unlikely right now. But these things, like when you do get into the range where these conversations can have real implications, um, that's when it becomes a little bit trickier, in terms of like nailing down whether or not something is going to happen. I think it's less likely than that he is a Laker on December 15th or 16th or whatever. But I also don't think that we could completely write off that um, that outcome that soon. All right, let's go into the Discord mailbag, which I just put the link on there as well. Let's go. All right. So 2 weeks with pay. Bill Simmons made a flippant comment on today's pod about there already being trade whispers out there for LeBron. Context: the comment was made during a joking exchange where he was explaining how much he enjoyed that his two most hated teams, the Lakers and Yankees, were not doing that well at the comment. A, have you heard these whispers? And B, how likely do you think it is that LeBron gets traded at the deadline if this team continues to be mediocre to bad? Already hit on a lot of that stuff. There are whispers out there. Look, for one thing, there's whispers about everything. How loud those whispers get, obviously, is another thing altogether. But there are a lot of people around the league who are just kind of like wondering, he can't honestly be okay with just riding out the rest of his career and never viably contending for a championship again. He can't honestly. I sometimes feel that way too. So I participate in those whispers to a certain extent. But uh I things would have to go really, really poorly, I think, for him to approach Jeannie and say, "Hey, we've had a good run. Let's call it quits." All right. So here's a fun one to end on. Oh no, we have two more. So I'll go out of order, kind of. Thoughts on trading AR for Rui? No, AR or Rui for Dennis Schroeder and Dorian Finney-Smith. Well, um, the Schroeder thing, I don't get. I don't understand it. Like the way that Lakers fans go on and on and on about Dennis Schroeder, you would think that he won like 4 championships with the Lakers. You would think he was like Derek freaking Fisher. He was like annoying to finally pretty good his first stint. Then he was almost out of the league because he turned down a giant extension because of how annoying he was in that first stint. And then in his second stint, finally accepted the role that he should be playing in the NBA to be his like most impactful player, the most impactful version of himself. And then now again, we're doing this all over again. It's like he's still the same guy. He's still an undersized guard who does compete. I'll give him that. Works his ass off defensively. It's something that the Lakers miss quite a bit. But the shooting is still an issue. I don't care what he's shooting from 3-point range. He still has that load up catapult shot that defenses don't respect. And that's always going to limit his impact with the Lakers. And it's just like, why we don't have to keep the retread thing going. We can get a little bit more creative. If he's like a throw in a trade, fine. In this case, we're talking about bringing him in with the Dorian Finney-Smith. Fine. I'm not trading Austin Reeves for Dennis Schroeder. I'm not. Like flat out. Absolutely not. And like if you're talking like if it's Gabe, hilariously, because they signed Gabe to be the Schroeder replacement. But if it's Gabe and Rui for DFS and Schroeder, okay, begrudgingly, because I'm getting Dorian Finney-Smith. But all of this talk going on and on and on about Dennis Schroeder, like, let it go. He was like he was an important part of a team that got swept in the Western Conference Finals. Like, why was he even? I don't know. But he was. It's just like, let it go. Let that part of your life go. All right. Last one here from George Santiago. Since the holidays are coming, what is your top 3 to 5 dishes for Christmas/holiday dinner meal? Where does prime rib rank if you haven't mentioned it yet? I love a good holiday prime rib, and the hotter the horseradish sauce, and the more soulful the au jus, the better. And then you have some stuffing that the au jus seeps into because it's sitting there on the plate too. Perfect. The au jus gets into the mashed potatoes a little bit. Awesome. Cool. And that to me is like it's a heavy dinner because you have 2 starches. So you gotta get a vegetable in there somewhere, have a salad or something. But like prime rib, I I would say second. My favorite is a holiday glazed ham. You get the honey on there, you get the pineapple on there. You let that sit there all day and let all of that ooey gooiness just like seep into the meat. That is perfect. That with some like dark meat turkey, it makes up for the fact that you have turkey on your plate. That's the good stuff right there. But if you're not going to have a holiday ham, then I'm going with a holiday prime rib. Another fun one here, if you're like, cooking on a budget, tri-tip. I'm telling you guys, get a bunch of tri-tips and slice it a little bit thinner, and it operates as a pretty good prime rib substitute. It's not the same. It's not a ribeye, so it's not going to be the same, but it's pretty damn good. I also love lamb. Like if you're doing a smaller Christmas meal, if it's just you and somebody else, a rack of lamb is always really impressive and relatively easy, actually. So you could do that. An herb crusted rack of lamb, good stuff there. But yeah, like those are the ones that I would probably go to. Turkey is somewhere in like the 30s. It's just not good. We gotta let it go. Turkey is the Dennis Schroeder of holiday meats. There, I said it. Oh, we got one more here from Grape Swords, who writes, "Who's worth 2 picks from Rob's perspective? Who fits that criteria for you?" So I'm not going to go with like a specific player here because like Brandon Ingram fits that criteria, I think. But to me, and I did Andy's show on ESPN LA last week, I believe. Um, the way I would put it is if the Lakers are going to move both of those picks, they have to be really, really confident. Um, like damn near nail down type of confidence that yeah, I know BI is probably off the table, like you said, because of the injury. But um they would have to be really, really confident, injuries notwithstanding, that the Lakers would be making a long and lengthy playoff run because of that trade. Remember, the Lakers did all of moved first round draft capital um, for Russell Westbrook because they believed that that would extend the championship window. They were obviously wrong, but that was still why they did it. And then when they traded Russell Westbrook and they included first round draft capital to do that, they immediately made that run all the way to the Western Conference Finals. So if Rob is going to, you know, put that type of asset price on the table, he would only be doing so if he has confidence that on the other end of that trade is a lengthy playoff run. And that's what gets difficult, right? Is like, even when they traded Russell Westbrook, it was like I was happy to see the guy gone because that era was such a nightmare. But nobody thought that they were going to get all the way to the Western Conference. I was really confident actually back then. And even I was like, damn, this Western Conference Finals run is crazy. This is awesome. And then obviously eventually it ended the way that it did. In this case, like if they move those first round picks and then now you're entering the post LeBron AD era potentially with that much fewer first round draft capital, then the Lakers have to be very, very confident that the move that they make gets them, 2, 3, good playoff series out of it. And ideally, championship contention. I don't think there's enough there asset wise to put them in that realm of championship contenders, but they could then viably look themselves in the mirror and say, we did everything that we could to give LeBron and AD one final shot at winning a championship together. And like, honestly, that's all I want. Just give them a more viable chance than they have right now. All right, I have to run so that I can record this tonight's episode of the Lowdown as well. So keep an eye out on that on the audio feed. Thank you, everybody, to all of the questions. Really, really good ones out there. Love talking about food. Hope I didn't ramble too much about the LeBron thing, but you guys let me know. We have some fun guests lined up for the rest of the week. With the Lakers on this break, and then also going into next week as well. Just make one more double check here that there aren't any more. Yeah, good. All right, we are good. So yeah, while I still have a voice, or at least voice enough to record this next lowdown, I'm Anthony Irwin saying have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's, and I will talk to you tomorrow.